And 13 years ago, I thought it would be legal long before now. And while the war is going on, it's been something that often we as activists have perceived those in positions of authority, you know, judges, lawyers, politicians, and police officers as being who we are up against. But I argue very much, and have for years, that blaming police officers for the war on drugs is like blaming truckers for climate change. We need to be more intelligent in how we deal with these issues and work with them as a community, because these issues of public policy and the environment and things that cannabis is tied into affect each and every person that walks around on the streets. And I think if we make them understand how and why we are concerned about this, there will be more and more people that are willing to step up and become part of that change. And today, I think we are incredibly honored and privileged to have a police officer coming, a local officer from the Victoria region, to speak about not only legalizing cannabis and changing the laws here. This gentleman has gone much farther. He understands that this war is futile and a waste of time, and worse than that. And so, without putting any more words in his mouth, thank you very much for coming. I introduce you to Dave Bratzer.
Let's take a moment to get set up here. Everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, Ted, for having me here today. I'm here to talk about ending drug prohibition in Canada. And so specifically what that means is gradually legalizing and regulating drugs. So talking about not only marijuana, which I know Ted is a big fan of, but also heroin, cocaine, and other substances that are harmful. So first of all, you should know that I am a police officer, but I'm here on my own time. I'm off duty. I'm actually on vacation right now. So I'm volunteering my time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify and make it very clear that my views are my own, and they certainly don't represent those of my employer. So when I talk today about policing, I'm referring more towards the profession of policing throughout Canada and not any particular agency in Victoria. Also, you should know that I don't condone drug abuse. And I think that any drug abuse, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, heroin, or other substances, is harmful. And there's a body of research that shows that. In particular, I want teenagers or high school kids who are watching this, you know, on YouTube, wherever it ends up, this video, to know that just because our drug laws in Canada are harmful and ineffective does not constitute a moral justification in and of itself to use or abuse drugs. In particular, I think young people should start their lives by making positive, healthy choices so that they can carry those habits throughout the rest of their lives. Okay. And nor do I condone breaking the law, right? I'm a police officer. I took an oath, a solemn oath to uphold the law, and that's certainly what I do. It's what taxpayers pay me to do. It's my job. So this speech is not about breaking laws or encouraging people to break the law. It's about changing the laws.
Yeah.
So somebody questioned whether a police officer even has the legal right to speak out about changing laws in our country. After all, it's my duty to enforce them. To people who would say that, I would suggest that they look at the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and Section 2 of the Charter does not say that freedom of expression applies to everybody except police officers. Section 2 of the Charter says that freedom of expression is a fundamental freedom and it applies to everybody, including police officers. So, in hearing this, some might say, okay, you have a legal right to speak out or to speak your mind, but you have a moral duty not to do so, right? For the sake of our communities, for the sake of our children, it would send the wrong message. But in my experience, the exact opposite is true. And I'll just give one example quickly. Here in the Victoria area, sometimes what we'll see is that a drug dealer, an adult male, will begin dating an at-risk teenager or female, and he'll get her to hold his dope for him because he knows that as a youth she is less likely to be prosecuted, and if she is prosecuted, she is less likely to go to jail. So that's an example of how our drug laws actually put drugs in the hands of young people in our country. And in any event, I think when a police officer does speak out about changing laws, I think it's very important to do so in a way that is cautious, in a way that is respectful, in a way that is honest. So that's what I'm going to try and do today. So I'm here as a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. LEAP started in 2002. It was started by 5 police officers. 4 of them were retired at the time. And they look back on their experiences as police officers, and they didn't like what they saw, specifically in regards to drug prosecutions. So the group is modeled after Vietnam Veterans Against the War. That group had credibility because its members had been there. The members of that group were soldiers who had experienced the horrors of war, and so they were well positioned to speak about it because they had been there. So whether you agreed with the Vietnam War or not, you still listened to what they had to say. So now, 6 years later, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition has grown substantially. There are 10,000 members in the group. It staffs a speakers bureau of 80 to 100 speakers.
Excuse me, Mr. Bratzer, is that Canadian? Is this a total Canadian? Law Enforcement Against Prohibition is all Canadian or also American?
No, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, it's based out of the United States, and it has members all over the world.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So it staffs a speakers bureau of about 80 to 100 speakers. Now included in that bureau are people like Jack Cole, who is a retired New Jersey State police officer. He retired as a lieutenant with 26 years of law enforcement experience. 12 of that was doing undercover drug work. It includes people like Richard Van Wickler, who is a superintendent of a correctional facility in New Hampshire. It includes Larry Campbell, who is chief coroner in British Columbia and also the mayor of Vancouver. It also includes retired BC Judge Jerry Parody. It also includes retired Vancouver Police Detective Tony Smith. So Law Enforcement Against Prohibition is a credible group. The website is www.leap.cc, so that's leap.cc. There's a lot of great material there, and I'd encourage you to have a look at it. Now, to give presentations like I am for LEAP, you need to be currently or formerly involved in law enforcement or the criminal justice system, so that can include judges, crown prosecutors, probation officers, corrections, anybody that's involved in the criminal justice system. But to join LEAP, you don't have to be involved in the criminal justice system. Anybody can join. Anybody can volunteer for LEAP. So if anybody's interested in donating their time, please get in touch with me after the presentation. LEAP is largely focused on reforming American drug policy. And here in Canada, we see the effects of that policy, but on a lesser scale, I would argue. We're not so focused on locking people up. But even here in Canada, you still do see the effects of drug prohibition quite a lot. I'm a patrol officer. I work in an urban area where issues of poverty, homelessness, mental health, and drug addiction are always present. So a lot of times I end up arresting the same people for the same crimes over and over again. And about a year ago I began to get frustrated because that's what I was doing, is I was arresting street level addicts for things like breaking into vehicles. And they would go to jail for a little bit and they would get out and they would do the same